All right. Well, I think that we might get started. Welcome everyone. Thanks so much for coming along this evening. My name is Sarah McCabe, and I have been contracted by the team at Switch Your Thinking to talk to you tonight about one of my favourite things to talk about, which is solar panels. Before we begin, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands I'm presenting from today, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, as well as acknowledge the various traditional owners from the lands you're all coming from today across WA, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. So before we get started, a little bit of background about myself. I've worked in the sustainability field for 20 years or so now, and the last 10 or so of them have been focused on solar and energy efficiency projects. I've worked in a few local governments and done lots of solar panel projects on public buildings ranging from sort of 5 up to 500 kilowatts. And now in my current other life, I work with nonprofits doing similar stuff, but more sort of focused on providing advice and helping develop business cases for solar panels and battery projects. And as part of that, I have looked at lots and lots of solar quotes for organisations all around Australia. What I am not is an electrician. So if you're going to ask me a detailed electrical question or ask me to clarify some point on Western Power's rules, I might not be your person. My experience is really around energy and carbon management as a whole, but I do hope my background brings more sort of a consumer perspective to this workshop, because I can guarantee that everything that you've been confused about, I've been confused about at some point too. Just a disclaimer, I've prepared this workshop to the best of my ability using my experience and research, but this is a very rapidly changing industry, and I am also only human. So please do your own research if there's anything you're not entirely sure about. So who's Switch Your Thinking? Switch Your Thinking is a sustainability initiative founded in 2002 by the City of Armidale, the City of Gosnells, and the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale. And they all work together as the Southeast Regional Energy Group. And Switch Your Thinking's main objective is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions through lots of different energy, water, sustainable building, waste, and sustainable transport education initiatives. And they currently work with 14 local governments across Perth to help empower and educate the residents and businesses in those areas. So they do lots of programs and they put on lots of workshops. So if you're interested in their work, go and have a look at their website, follow them on their socials, or the best thing is just to sign up to their e-news, because then you get everything about all the good stuff that they're doing. This particular workshop, though, is a bit different to most of Switch Your Thinking's workshops because it's part of their energy efficiency pilot program, which has been running over the past few months, and that has been funded and supported by the WA government's Department of Energy and Economic Diversification. So this particular project is open to everyone in WA. And this project's funding a whole lot of free workshops on lots of different energy related topics. I'm also doing some of the other ones on energy efficiency and electric vehicles. And with solar panels, that's kind of like the three pieces of the puzzle. They all sort of work together. But it's not just workshops, it's also funding these energy audit kits, which you can see there on the slide, and they're now available to borrow from more than 100 different libraries and community resource centres all around the state. So there's lots of cool stuff in that kit, but most exciting is the thermal camera. In my opinion, that's a really cool piece of gear that helps you check your insulation and find air gaps and stuff like that in your home, and helps you make it more comfortable. So yes, fabulous that this project is now happening and allowing more people to access this equipment and helping them reduce their energy bills. So if you're interested in that, go and talk to your local library to see if they've got one. And the other great thing about this project is that just by attending one of the workshops or borrowing an energy audit kit and completing the feedback form, you could win an in-person home energy audit, or if you're building a house and you've got house plans, NATA's assessment on your new home design. So terms and conditions apply. See the Switch website for more details. At the end, I'm going to put up a QR code you can scan to access that feedback form. Or Kerry, if you've got a link to it, maybe you can pop that in the chat as well. Make sure we don't forget to give that to you at the end. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? First, we're going to talk about how solar panels and batteries work. Then we're going to talk about using a bill and your bills and a calculator to work out how much money you would save and how large your system needs to be. We're going to talk about batteries, talk about the rebates that are available, how to find a reputable installer, how to get a good quote, and within that, we'll talk about things like your roof. Hot water is actually quite important for when you're installing solar panels, and finally maintenance and things like that. So hopefully that covers most of the things that you need to know. We'll have some time for questions at the end. You're welcome to pop questions in the chat, but I'm not great at seeing the chat and talking at the same time. So Kerry may be able to answer them, or I'll just go back and read them at the end. I guess the point is I'm not ignoring you if you put something in the chat and I don't answer. So my hope is today I'm going to be able to give you all the information you need and nothing you don't, and give you some reputable resources that you can go to after today to answer any follow-up questions. And that's so you don't get that dreaded disease, which is analysis paralysis. And this afflicts so many people buying solar, and we don't want you to get that, because solar panels are great. They can save you a lot of money, and we don't want you to miss out because something has become a roadblock and it's making it feel too hard. There are lots of links in today's presentation, and I have popped a link in the chat, or I will do at the end, make sure I remember, to a handout with all of them on it. And I've also going to put up a QR code so you can download that document as well, so you don't need to copy down all of the links. I should also say today that I'm only going to be talking, or mostly talking, about grid connected systems, not off grid. I think a lot of people would love to go off grid, but in the city, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because you need to size the batteries really, really large to cover all eventualities. Like you've got lots of cloudy days in a row, or you've got 10 visitors staying and stuff like that. So it just means the batteries have to be huge to make sure that you have ongoing power in those situations. And that just means it's really, really expensive. If you were in a rural area, say, and you were building a new house and it was going to cost a lot to connect the power anyway, that might be where it makes financial sense. But I'm not going to talk about it really today, but obviously some of the stuff I'll talk about will still apply. All right, how do solar panels work in a grid-connected system? Would you believe I couldn't find a nice schematic on how grid-connected solar power works, so I had to make my own with dodgy clip art and GIFs. The other thing I'm not, as well as an electrician, is a graphic designer, as you'll see today. Anyway, it all starts with the sun. It sends sunlight down to Earth, which hits the solar panel and excites free electrons, which are sitting in a silicon matrix in the panel, and that creates a current, and that's called DC, or direct current electricity. And that electricity is changed by the inverter to AC electricity, or alternating current electricity. And that's the type of electricity that can be used by your household appliances. And so the electricity that comes out of the inverter is used by your house. And then if there's anything left over, that goes to the grid. If your house needs more than what the solar panels can provide, that's topped up by the grid as well. You can see from this diagram, the inverter is a really important part of your system, because not only does it change the electricity, it also monitors the system, it manages the power quality, and it just makes sure the whole system is working safely with the grid. But what if you have a battery? What happens then? So there's two main ways that this can be done. Firstly, with a hybrid inverter, or what's also called DC coupling. So batteries are charged by the DC electricity, and a hybrid inverter will take the DC electricity, turn it into AC to run your house. Any leftover DC will be used to charge the battery, and after that, it'll convert the rest to AC so it can go out to the grid. So basically, it's one device that can both charge the battery and supply your home and the grid. It manages all that stuff. This is the situation that would usually happen if you're installing solar and batteries at the same time. Or it sometimes might also happen if you've got an existing system and you just take off the old solar inverter and put on a hybrid inverter, which seems to be happening sort of more and more commonly now. The second way is via AC coupling. And so this is usually what would happen if you already had solar panels and you just wanted to tack on a battery. So in this case, the solar inverter changes the electricity to AC. It goes to a battery inverter, which changes it back to DC to charge the battery. And then it changes it back into AC again to go back out to your house. So it's obviously a little bit more of a roundabout route. And each time that happens, you lose a little bit of power in electricity, but it's not really material. This system works completely fine. With an AC coupled system, you might have an extra little box on your wall, or the battery inverter might be incorporated into the battery itself. So we'll talk a little bit more about the pros and cons of AC and DC coupling later on, but for now, I guess that's broadly how things work. So given that's how it works, the parts of a solar system basically consist of the panels, the inverter or inverters, the batteries, the racking, which is what holds the panels to the roof, and then all the wiring and bits and pieces and things in between. So that brings me to something else that's really important to know when you're buying solar panels, and that is, how is electricity measured? So I think most people have heard of a watt, and I think they've heard of a watt because it's what's on your light bulb box. So you can see a picture there of a light bulb box, and it's a 4-watt light globe. A watt is how much power your solar panels are producing, or how much power an appliance is using at any moment in time. And kilo just means 1,000. A kilowatt is 1,000 watts. So you can see that my LED light bulb there uses 4 watts, and that uses very little power compared to my column heater there, which hopefully you can see the little blue circle that says 2,400 watts, or 2.4 kilowatts, up to that. A kilowatt hour is how much energy your appliance is using, or your solar panels are producing, over time. So if your solar panels are producing 3 kilowatts for 1 hour, they will have produced 3 kilowatt hours. And if your panels are producing 3 kilowatts for half an hour, they'll have produced 1.5 kilowatt hours. And a kilowatt hour is a unit in your electricity bill. And those two things are very often confused, even by solar installers and salesmen and things like that. But it's quite important to know the difference. And the reason you need to know that is you might get a 6.6 kilowatt solar system that produces 20 to 40 kilowatt hours of energy over a day. Or you might get a 12 kilowatt hour battery, which can put out at any one moment in time 5 kilowatts. So that's why it's important. Another way is to explain it is a bit like a hose. So the kilowatts are just how fast the water is coming out, and kilowatt hours are like what's in the bucket at the end. Hopefully that all makes sense. That's the most complicated part of the entire presentation. All right, so the first thing I always do when I'm looking at solar is to get out the electricity bill. And the easiest way to do that is to log into your My Account data on Synergy. And I don't think we have anyone from Horizon on here, but they've got a similar thing on Horizon as well. And it looks something like that. And you can go into the Bills and Payments tab, and in there you can download all your old bills. So just download all your bills for a year, add them all up, and divide it by 12 so you have your average energy use per month. Now, the electricity credit has made that a little bit more confusing, but look, it doesn't have to be exact. You just need a representative figure. So just go back and find the most recent 12 months without the electricity and just come up with an average. And the next step is to use a calculator. And I like to do this before I get quotes, because it means I've got independent information on what the solar panel is going to save, rather than just relying on the installer's estimates, which can, it has to be said, be a bit ambitious. So the first one I'm going to show you is a calculator by Choice. So really love Choice, great non-profit consumer organization. And this is really easy to use. All you have to do is put in your postcode and then the number of people, and click estimate. I'm hoping everyone can, oh, yep, you can see me doing this. Good. And you can see down here, it'll give you an estimate for how much the system should cost you, the time it would take to pay itself back, and then the yearly savings. So around about $1,000 per year. Down here, you can play around with the typical system size and also with a battery as well. And then up here is where you put in your average monthly bill. And you can see that if your bill is really high, the payback period comes down a lot, and the potential savings per year go up a lot. But if your bill is really low, that changes quite a lot. So every workshop I do, someone will come up to me and say, I live alone, I've got a gas hot water system, I work all day, is solar worth it for me? And I can't tell you that, but this is how you find out. Come and put your average monthly spend into this calculator, and it will, it gives you good information that you can make that decision on. So this is fabulous. It's really easy to use, but it's really easy to use because it uses lots of assumptions and averages, and you might not be average, and those assumptions may not apply to you. So you'll notice that this is powered by another group called Solar Quotes. And I'm going to talk quite a lot about them today because they're a really great source of information about installing solar and electrification and all sorts of things. So they are a quote generator and they've got their own vetted network of installers. So I guess you can't say they're entirely independent, but they have gone to great lengths to make sure that the advice they're giving is independent. And as you can see, Choice has been happy to partner with them as well. So they have got their own calculator, which is a little bit more sophisticated, and you can play around with a few more things. So if I put in a similar example here, then we'll just go with 6.6 kilowatts because this is a national tool. In WA, 6.6 is basically the limit. Here is the place where you can select which roof face it's on, but at the moment we'll just keep it at north. We won't worry about a battery now, but we will go back and do that. It will also give you an estimate of what the system should roughly cost you. And then here's where you put in your electricity costs. So in WA at the moment, if you're on a flat rate tariff with Synergy, it's 32 cents. Now, just to make this comparable with the previous example, I'll say the average spend in a year. So this is a bit different. This is your electricity use over a year. And the supply charge in WA is $1.16. Now, if you forget any of that, you can go into your electricity bill and that will show you what the supply charge is. Now, the feed-in tariff. So the feed-in tariff is how much Synergy will pay you for your excess solar that goes into the grid. So in WA at the moment, if you were to install a new solar system, you would get 2 cents in the middle of the day. Whoops, and you would get 10 cents after, so that's from like 9 till 3 p.m. And after 3 p.m., you get 10 cents. So just because most of it will go out in the middle of the day, we'll just, let's say 3 cents, just because you might get some of that 10 cents, but mostly 2. And go calculate the savings. And you can see it's pretty similar. You get $1,000 in savings, payback of about 5 years. Lots of good information in here, including how much it will save you over 10 years and 20 years. Over here, it shows you the cumulative savings, and you'll notice it breaks it up into self-consumption and the feed-in tariff. Now, the feed-in tariff, as you can see here, is only a really small part of your savings. So when people say, oh, the feed-in tariff's going down, it's going to go away soon, it's not worth getting solar, that's not true, because the majority of your savings are going to come from consuming your solar yourself and avoiding paying 32 cents from the grid. So you can see that's really handy for demonstrating that. This is really handy graph as well, because once you install your solar and you go away and look at it and go, oh, I don't know if it's working properly. I've got 6.6 kilowatts of solar, but at the moment it's only generating 5 kilowatts. Something must be wrong. That's completely normal, because they'll never generate the rated maximum. And that's for all sorts of reasons, like the clouds, the time of day, the temperature, all sorts of things. So you can come in here at different months of the year and see what you could expect to be generating. So in October, we're looking at around about 4.37 kilowatts. So that's really handy thing to do, and also how much it's generating per day as well. You can compare that to what your solar system's generating. All right, now the most important thing I have to show you up here is this self-consumption. So this is assumed that about a quarter of your solar is self-consumed and the rest just goes out to the grid. If you can increase this by using your power in the middle of the day, you can see how much your payback improves and the savings go up. So I'm going to talk a lot about self-consumption today. Okay, let's go back and pop in a battery. So we'll keep that the same, 6.6 kilowatts, and we'll just choose a generic 10 kilowatt hour battery. And again, it gives you the battery cost after the rebates. If you want, that gives you the federal rebate, but not the state one. So if you want to if you want to apply the state rebate, it'll be a little bit less. So it'll be about $1,300 for this one, 157. And everything else is the same. We calculate the savings. So you can see how the savings have gone up, and the payback for both of those things together is 7 years. Most of the heavy lifting is done by the solar panels, and the batteries take a little bit longer, but if you're happy for that combined payback, then you might decide that batteries are worth it for you. So what I do is use, so again, similar thing. People come up to me and they give me their situation and they say, is a battery worth it for me? This is how you work it out. I use these calculators twice, once before I get a quote and then once after they get the quote back. And then you can plug in the actual costs because that could be quite different to what we've assumed. So that's where you plug that in, and then you can do the calculations again and see if it's still worth it for you. And I also like to compare a few sort of scenarios side by side as well. If you're a bit more tech savvy, you might be interested in this one as well. This is called Sunspot. That's one's been developed by universities and the Australian government. So in that one, you can actually bring up some aerial imagery of your roof and pop solar panels on and stuff like that. I just find it a bit more tricky to use, so I can't demonstrate in the workshop, but go away and have a look at it. All right, rebates. So as of this moment for solar panels, there's only one rebate, and it's called the Small Scale Technology Certificates, or STCs, and that will take about a quarter off the cost of your system. And so what they are certificates that are generated when you install a system, and you just sign a form which hands them over to your installer, and they will sell them to electricity companies who have to buy them to meet Australia's renewable energy target. So it's been a super successful program to sort of promote uptake of solar in Australia. Every year on January the 1st, the number of available STCs per project reduces a little bit, and it's going to keep doing that until 2030. So I tell you that because if an installer starts pressuring you, saying the rebate's running out at the end of the year, that's always a red flag for me. It's good to be aware of. So if you're really serious about solar, now might be a good time to sort of book it in, so you save that little bit. But it's not really a huge difference to your savings. It's a couple of $100 maybe. And, solar quotes vary for so many reasons anyway, from year to year. So don't let them pressure you with that one. Some people ask me, should I keep them and then sell them on the market myself? I have tried it, and it was a big hassle, not with, for not really a great amount of reward. So, yeah, I would just usually say just hand them on. Okay. Batteries. So very exciting. We now have two very generous battery rebates in WA, one from the state government and another from the Australian government. Both started on the 1st of July. And as you would expect, lots of unscrupulous operators out there saying all sorts of things. So just be sure you're getting the right info. Go to the official websites, which I have put on that handout as well. And that's where you can read to get all of the details. So firstly, the Australian one, that's for batteries sort of 5 to 100 kilowatt hours in size. Most householders would be on the smaller end of that. This also uses the STC system, but instead of the energy retailers buying the STCs, the government is going to buy them. And in the same way, the discount will decrease slightly every year up until 2030. And so the installers will just quote the STC discount on your quote, just like with solar panels as well. You won't have to apply. So for a 10 kilowatt hour battery, it would be about $3,700 discount. And it's a little bit different to the solar panel STCs in that you only get one battery per premises. So you only get the discount on one battery per premises, whereas solar panels, it's just every time you install them. So and finally, you need to have the technical capability to participate in a virtual power plant to be eligible, but you don't actually have to participate in one. I'm going to talk about virtual power plants in a minute. So the WA scheme. So I say take two because the details did change from the original announcement, which was before the federal government rebate was announced. So they've actually refined this program to make it work better with that program. And now, while the rebate is smaller, a lot more people are going to be able to access it. So that's good. So up to $1,300 for Synergy customers and up to $30,800 for Horizon Power customers. So that's up to a 10 kilowatt hour battery. So yeah, and they're also offering no interest loans, which will be available for up to $10,000 to households with a combined annual income of less than 210,000 and can be used for batteries and new or upgraded equipment such as inverters and solar panels if they're installed at the same time as the battery. To access this one, you need to use an accredited vendor and you need to participate in a virtual power plant. But look, all of those details are in that link. Just have a good read of it so you understand how that one works. So, what is a virtual power plant? A virtual power plant is a coordinated network of energy assets on lots of different buildings. It's mostly usually rooftop solar and battery storage, but it can take all sorts of forms. And you might have heard about some of these forms which are happening over east, which can't really happen here. So some of those virtual power plants are exposed to things like the wholesale energy market. Sometimes they include other things like EV chargers or air conditioning as well. But for the VPP under the rebate, it's really just confined to batteries for Synergy and solar and battery for Horizon. So for Synergy, they have this battery rewards plan that you would sign up to get the rebate and participate in the virtual power plant. And so basically under that plan, Synergy would have the ability to draw power out of your battery and supply it to the grid when it's needed. And that sounds a bit scary to a lot of people. They don't really like the idea of giving up control of their battery, but it is quite a powerful way to allow more renewables into the grid and also allow for grid stability. So just for a bit of perspective, with all of the batteries combined installed under the rebate, that's about half the capacity of the Collie big battery. So it's potentially a really big contribution to our grid. With all VPPs, what I always say is there's lots of terms and conditions about how and when they can take the power that they're going to use. And so in this case, they're saying they'll only use the battery during activation events, which is basically a time when they need it in the grid, like the grid's under stress. Might be on a very hot day or a very cold night. So in this case, a maximum of 30 activation events per year, with each event being a maximum of 6 hours and limited to one charge-discharge cycle per day. And it's great they've included that because some of the criticism of some of those other virtual power plants was that they cycled the battery too often, which affected their life. So that's good that they've done that. And at all other times, the battery just remains available for your own use and benefit. And of course, if they're going to take your power, they need to recompense you for the power you provide. So they are offering 70 cents for every kilowatt hour of electricity exported to the energy system, plus energy offset credits to cover your energy costs during the events. So it's probably not going to make you squillions of dollars, but it might be a little nice extra, probably like a couple of $100 that you could put back in the calculator to improve your payback. You can either use the Synergy Battery Rewards VPP plan or an alternative commercial one, but there's only one on the list at the moment, that's with Plico. If you're in a Horizon Power area, I'm not sure if anyone is this evening, but they've got another virtual power plant called Community Wave. From their website, looks like you just automatically get signed up to that, so you don't really get a choice, and the amounts you get paid sort of vary depending where you are. So virtual power plants are pretty new here. People are just learning about them. So look, just have a really good read of the website. Make sure you understand how they work. And importantly, how long you're locked in for as well. So the Synergy one is a 2-year contract. So if it's not working for you, you can get out of it after that. All right. So I've just shown you how to work out if a battery would work for you financially. And aside from the financial benefits and allowing renewables into the grid, they're also great for blackout protection. But if you want blackout protection, just make sure you're really clear with your installer that you want this, because weirdly, not all batteries have it. I just sort of thought that's what a battery was, but they don't actually all have this capability. And you also need to be aware that backing up your entire house in a blackout is really expensive. So most of the batteries are only going to be able to back up a few circuits, like maybe your lights and power points and for your fridge and stuff like that. So you just need to discuss that with your installer about what you want it to do. Make sure they can deliver that for the battery with the battery that they install. If you want to prepare for multi-day blackouts, you also want batteries that are able to charge from your solar if the grid is down. And that'll be another thing you need to talk to your installer about, making sure they can do it. So otherwise, the battery might kick in a blackout, but once it's run out, it's sort of flat until the grid comes back on. So these are all things you need to talk about and weigh up the costs and benefits, because they do, those options do often cost more. If you want to get solar now but not a battery, don't worry a lot about getting a battery compatible system, because a battery should be able to add to most systems just by adding a battery inverter or AC coupling, as I showed you before, or just switching out the inverter as well for a hybrid inverter. If you ask for a battery compatible inverter, what I've seen sometimes is that they might try and sell you a hybrid inverter on its own without the battery. And then what I've heard is they're sometimes limited to the types of batteries you can use down the track. So if you're not going to come back and do it for another 5 years or so, it might not be compatible with whatever they've got available at the time. And they're just usually a little bit more expensive as well. So that's just something to be aware of and to talk to your installer about. Uh, Another thing they can do, like I said, down the track, is just replace the existing inverter with a hybrid inverter at that time. And so I've seen some installers quoting just a really good quality but basic sort of standard inverter. So they've got the option to either replace it and then you're not lost as much money, or you can AC couple it when the time comes when you want to put a battery on. So DC coupling or a hybrid inverter can be a better option if you're getting the battery installed at the same time, just because it's neater, and you've got all your monitoring in one app, and they're quite fast to install as well, because they're all kind of compatible and stuff like that. Some DC coupled systems as well can allow you to get a larger solar system rather than the standard 6.6 kilowatts that you're usually allowed as well. So yeah, that's another thing your installer might suggest to you. Look, with batteries, there's lots of options your installer is going to be throwing at you. There are genuinely new technologies coming out all the time, and it can genuinely get a bit complicated sometimes with retrofitting, or if you've got three-phase power and stuff like that. So this is a point at which people get a lot of analysis paralysis. And my approach is always just to take a step back, be really clear with my installer about what I want the battery to do, and then just get them to come up with the best options, whether that be AC or DC coupled or whatever. Then you can take the costs that they're quoting you, put them back in the calculator, and then you can see which ones are going to work best for you. I am quite worried about you at this point. I'm worried you're going to leave here and go, okay, that sounds all right. And then you talk to an installer and get bamboozled again. If that happens, that link there is a really good one about batteries. It's on the Solar Quotes website. Really easy, goes into a lot of detail and is really easy to read. You can also just search their blogs and stuff for different issues as well. All right, finding a good installer. Unfortunately, I can't give you any guarantees with this one. You can always get a dodgy salesperson and stuff like that, but these are the things that I do to increase the likelihood of getting a good installer. And the number one thing and the most important, most basic thing you need to check is that their Solar Accreditation Australia they use an SAA accredited designer and installer. So this is an accreditation that the individual who designs your system and the individual who comes to your house to oversee the installation should hold. So you need to check that they definitely have that accreditation. It used to be called, up until last year, a CEC or a Clean Energy Council accredited designer and installer, and lots of the installers still have that on their website just to make things extra confusing for everyone. But that is the very, very base level accreditation that you want to see. The other thing is under the battery rebate, the vendors that you're required to use under that, the WA government has done some due diligence on them and looked at a few different things. So you can go, there's a link there with a list of those accredited vendors, which that might be another good starting point. Solar Quotes has a really great database of reviews of solar installers as well. So whenever I'm looking at a solar installer, I'll always go on there and have a look at their review. They accept reviews for all installers, not just their own vetted network as well. So that's another good place to have a look. And of course, you can use their quote generator as well. And finally, Switch Your Thinking has a great program called Rewards for Residents, and that is where they've offered discounts on lots of different sustainability products, including solar panels and batteries. So they've got a few installers on there as well that offer discounts if you're in a Switch Your Thinking local government area. So that can be another place as well to kind of narrow down your search. Of course, it's all of the usual consumer protection stuff applies. Avoid door-to-door salesmen. My own father-in-law got approached by a door-to-door salesman, solar installer the other day, and was really horrified by some of the techniques that they're still using, which is really unfortunate. Anything unsolicited letters saying you're eligible for a government program, especially those battery ones that are going around, they are usually just a very small bad quality battery that's really expensive. Of course, all those dodgy Facebook posts and things like that, they just seem to want to harvest your email address and your personal details. So avoid all of that unsolicited stuff. And of course, all the usual consumer protection rules apply. Get multiple quotes, check their ABN and electrical license, check they've been around a long time, talk to your friends and so on. I put a lot of effort into researching the installer because ideally, if you get a good installer, the rest of the process should hopefully be reasonably easy. I hope. All right, and the other thing you can do to check they're a good installer is check that they give you a good quote. So these are all things that I like to see in a good quote, and I'm going to talk to you about each of them now. So a detailed design with the proposed system size and the layout on the roof. So they should give you the size of the system and a picture showing where it will fit on the roof. And the standard size for solar panels in WA is 6.6 kilowatts on a 5 kilowatt inverter. You're allowed to do that because they never produce their maximum rated amount. So that is basically the limit for single phase in WA. If you have 3-phase power, you can get more. And if you get the battery, depends on the brand and how they're coupling it and stuff like that, but they can sometimes also get you a larger solar system as well. I guess popular opinion at the moment, just go for the 6.6 kilowatts, even if your usage is a little bit low, because you kind of want to allow for future use, like you might want to get an electric car or two, or install another aircon or shift to electric hot water heating. So your energy use may increase in the future. And being the standard sort of package, it's often the cheapest per kilowatt as well. But yeah, look, play around with that calculator. If you think a smaller system would be better, ask them to quote on that. If you use a lot of power and you've got 3-phase, or you want to get a battery, you can also use the calculator to model bigger returns on a bigger system as well. For a battery, they'll usually quote how much energy it can store in kilowatt hours and how much it can supply at any one time in kilowatts. So you can see there, a 5 kilowatt battery, by the time you run 2 of my oil column heaters and turn on the kettle, that's it's tripped it. So that's why you only can back up a few circuits. The typical battery size for a house is generally around 10 to 16 kilowatt hours, and that's why the rebate programs tend to reference that 10 kilowatt hour size battery. And I guess the rule of thumb is most houses use sort of 20 to 30 kilowatt hours per day. So a 10 kilowatt hour battery will cover at least the afternoon and evening period, even if it doesn't last all night every night. So that's the idea with that one. Again, I recommend playing around with the calculator to work out what size battery might work for you. If you've got a complicated roof, have a look at that picture and make sure they've carefully designed it so they haven't just slapped the panels on and they're not like visibly sticking out over the ridge lines or anything like that. And if you've got a complicated roof, get them to come out and measure, get them to come out and do a site visit, measure your roof before they accept the quote, because you don't want them to come out in the day and say, oh, sorry, it's not going to fit. And then you're making decisions on the fly, and that's not a good way to make decisions. Also have a look at the roof faces. It used to be that you tried to get your panels on your north roof because that gave you the highest overall production. However, most of that production is in the middle of the day, and most people actually use their power first thing in the morning and when they get home in the evening. So it's really good to have some on the east and west faces as well, because they'll produce more power in that time. Panels are so cheap now, it can even be worth putting them on your south roof. And I've actually got mine on the south roof, but they are on tilt, so they're facing a bit more north. You just need to make sure the quote factors in that reduction in production, because it'll be about 20% less than a north-facing system, but can still be worth it. So if you want to verify that, remember in the solar calculator, I showed you where you could select where the roof face was. That's where you go in and change it to south, and that will change your production estimate. All right, a shade estimate. If you've got a shade assessment, sorry, if you have any trees or aerials, the quote should include a shade assessment, and your anticipated production should be based on this. And so most solar installers will kind of go, oh, I reckon it's not worth it for you. If they're really amazing, they take a camera up on the roof and a special camera to estimate it, but I never actually saw any installers ever do that. But now you'll start to notice that all of the quotes look the same, and it's because there's 3 or 4 quote tools that they all use. And in those quote tools, they have these shade assessment tools. So I did this, I just played around with this one in an open source quote tool. So I feel like there should be no excuse. They should be able to do it for you if shade is going to be an issue for you. So they just pop in a few trees and it calculates the angle of the sun and then works out how much less it's going to be at different times of the year. So it's pretty clever. If you have shade issues, you can get microinverters, which is like a little mini inverter on every panel or a group of panels, and they just help minimize the impact of the shade. And they're good for complicated roofs too, but of course they cost more, so you kind of have to weigh that up. All right, so the quote should have information on the performance of the system, and they should ask you for your power bills. So this part is relatively accurate, and then you can compare it to what you're getting in the calculator as well. So things like, yeah, your annual generation, greenhouse gas savings, percentage of consumption to be self-consumed, and the financial returns should all be listed in there. All right, web-based monitoring for both consumption and production. So most systems will include an online portal that will monitor your production. So that would be the green kind of line that you can see here as it goes up in the day and then comes down in the evening. And that should be able to be set up with alerts that will email you when your system's down. And that's really important so you don't get a rude shock with your power bill 1 month. But it's also really great to have consumption monitoring as well. And this is really useful for maximizing your self-consumption and therefore making the most of your solar production. So this is my sister's, and she is a good sister. She listened to me. She put consumption monitoring on, and you can see in the morning the power just kind of bumps along. It's the red line. That's probably her fridge cycling on and off. In the morning when they get up, they'll put on the toaster and stuff, and there's a little peak there. In the evening, there's a big peak when they make dinner and then watch TV and stuff, and then go to bed. In the middle of the day, you can see how the consumption pops up and it becomes blue, which is self-consumption, and it stays up for the whole day and then just comes down neatly again at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so that is where they put their pool pump on a timer. So you can see how much that's helping them increase their self-consumption. And this graph is also showing how much excess they've got. So I can see there that they probably got well and truly enough to charge an electric car in the middle of the day. So this is really, really handy. If you're only putting solar on, it'll cost you a little bit more, a few $100s more. I haven't had a quote for one for a little while, but if you're getting a battery, you should get this type of monitoring anyway, but it's good to kind of ask them what it looks like and yeah, see if it's intuitive and that sort of thing. All right, it should say if you need wiring, metering, or a switchboard upgrade and the relevant costs for that. You will probably, most people need a new meter, which costs about $100. When your meter is changed, you'll be able to access really fantastic data like this, which shows you when your power is being used throughout the day. So similar to that consumption and production monitoring, but this is net metering. So how much is coming in from the grid or going out to the grid. I like the other type better just because it's overlaid on top of each other. I find it easy to visualize, easy to use in an app, but you can also use this. Western Power have been proactively rolling out these smart meters across Perth. So you might already have one, and then you'll already have data like this. So you can go into my account, go into the interval data and have a look. This is really handy before you get solar panels, so you can take a guess at your current self-consumption. And if you already have this data, because you've already got solar, you can also download it in a big spreadsheet, and there's a calculator on the Solar Quotes website which lets you upload that data and helps calculate a more accurate battery size for you as well. There's always someone who comes to the workshop who loves spreadsheets and doing things like that, so I always mention that. If you don't already have a smart meter, you can also pay $100 and get one in advance as well. If you are from in a Horizon Power area, apparently all the properties in Horizon Power have one of these already, and so you should be able to access similar data. They should all put their name and Solar Accreditation Australia number on the quote, but hardly any of them do. But you can definitely ask for that, and you can also check it at that website to make sure that they are accredited. Finally, they should list all of the warranties, ideally with those terms or better. My panel product warranty is probably a bit short. There's some that are like 20, 25 years now. And the installation workmanship warranty is a really important one because that's what covers the actual install and all the wiring and bits and pieces in between. So your actual installer offers that particular warranty. The panel performance warranty is one you used to hear a lot about, but a reduction in panel performance is actually really difficult to prove because solar just varies so much. Your production varies so much from year to year anyway, based on the weather. So very hard to make a claim on your panel performance warranty, so don't worry about that one. But the product warranty is really important because if the product itself is obviously defective, that's what's going to cover the replacement. So they should include an itemized price, including the STCs and the discount that you will get from that. You will see in the calculators how much it should roughly cost you, but it will be probably more expensive than that if you've got 2 stories or some sort of really inaccessible roof or steep roof or something like that, or if you're getting microinverters or anything fancy. Now, this is the part where I think people get the most analysis paralysis, the brands and the models of all of the different components. What's a good brand and which one should you buy? And this is where installers, I think, like to confuse people the most. And I find the easiest thing to be reasonably assured you're going to get a reputable brand is to refer to these charts on the Solar Quotes website. Hopefully that's coming up for you now. Yes, good. So we go down here. These are brands that are considered to be reputable and well supported in Australia. So they're all pretty good. This is the more expensive side, and then this is the cheaper side. And same for inverters as well. The panels are basically all the same. Some might have be slightly more efficient, or there's bifacial ones and things like that. But really, at the end of the day, they like what you're going to see on your power bill is not going to be much different between any of these brands. The inverters are the part that's most likely to fail. So maybe in that case, it is a little worth getting probably a more slightly higher quality one. Yeah, and same with batteries as well. There's another table for batteries. They obviously things can go wrong with batteries, so I'd go towards the higher quality end as well with them. What to check after installation? The big thing is that your monitoring and your apps and alerts have all been set up properly before your installer leaves, because after you pay them, they're much less helpful when it comes to setting those things up, and it is quite important that that's all working. With your battery, get them to talk you through it and make sure that it's all working in the way that it should, and it's not going to trip anything when you've got lots of things all running at once and stuff like that. So yeah, just get them to talk it through. They should also hand you over some documentation, like manuals and things for the different components that have been installed. But yeah. All right, so once you've got your solar panels installed, you want to make sure you're making the most of them. Like I've said, the amount you self-consume makes a huge difference to your savings, and that's why that monitoring is so useful in working out how you're going self-consuming your solar power. So you hear about people saying, put your dishwasher on in the middle of the day, put your washing machine on a timer. So yes, absolutely do all that, But we all start out with good intentions and then things change. So what is probably going to have a bigger impact on your self-consumption are the set and forget options. And the really big one is your hot water system, because hot water usually makes up about a quarter of your energy use. If you have a heat pump or an electric hot water system or even solar with an electric booster, you can get it put on a timer to come on every day between like sort of 10 and 3 p.m. And if you've got a gas system, you can't use it to do that. You're going to be paying for gas over here when you've already got solar sitting over here for free. So before your gas system fails, start thinking about what you're going to replace it with. And the most efficient option is the heat pump. And we get you to think about it before it fails, because when your hot water system fails, all you usually want is a hot shower again. So people make very rushed decisions. They kind of do whatever the plumber tells them. And it is something that's going to impact your bills for a really long time. So make sure you have do your research and get ready now before your system fails. The other great set and forget is running your pool pump in the day if you're lucky enough to have a pool like my sister. An electric vehicle or two, really great way of soaking up that extra solar production so you can basically drive around for free. And so installing solar, often a gateway to getting off gas and becoming all electric. And Rewiring Australia, really great organisation that done some amazing work showing how much this can actually save homeowners. And it is pretty huge amount of money, and also carbon emissions. And that's by making 6 key decisions, which is solar, battery, heat pump hot water, reverse cycle air cons, induction hot plates, and electric vehicles. So if you want to see what they've done and see those calculations, go and have a look at Rewiring Australia's website. Maintenance. So you don't really need to clean your panels a lot unless you've had like birds roosting on them or something, or they're lying flat. If you have got a flat roof, not many people do, but it's good to have them tilted a bit, and that way the rain sort of washes them off. I live in a very dusty area and had my panels inspected not that long ago after 10 years, and they were starting to build up a little bit of dirt at the bottom of the panel, which he said could start to corrode the panel and cause issues. So I'm going to have mine cleaned soon, but I do live in the hills in a very dusty place. The other thing you can do is check your monitoring from time to time just to make sure, production hasn't dropped off. I've got microinverters, so I have this panel level monitoring, and that shows me that that dark blue panel there is producing less, so there might be something wrong with it. So that's quite a cool feature. I think the most important thing is just having an electrical inspection and service every sort of 3 years or so. And you can either get the original installer back, or if you have concerns about what they've done, you can get an independent inspection. So I spoke to an organization the other day, and their system was in a bad way after about 14 years because there'd been some damage that they hadn't noticed and the wiring was breaking down and stuff. So a regular inspection just means that you pick those things up earlier. They're more likely to have compatible parts because the standards and technology is, advancing so quickly. You're more likely to be able to claim on your insurance or your warranties and things like that. So that's why an inspection is important.
There's a question just come through, Sarah, on chat.
Okay. Okay, are electric car batteries able to be used to power your home? There's a few things there. There's a thing called vehicle to grid, and that has just starting to come out into Australia where you can use your car to kind of power your home and export to the grid. There's another one called vehicle to home. I think it's technically possible, but not really a widely available sort of solution at the moment. I think the vehicle to grid will start to come out more because the Australian standards have just been adopted for that. So there's more charges and stuff that you can buy coming out, but it's quite expensive, unfortunately. All right, and I've moved into a new house this week that has solar panels, but I have no idea about the specifics with them. I'd love to install a battery down the track. Any advice on what to check now? Okay, so you've got no manuals or anything handed over with the house. If you can find the inverter, sometimes there'll be a sticker on that that says, who installed it, and so you can call them. Otherwise, you can just get another installer to come out, and they should be able to work out what you've got and work from there. Yes. So someone's asked about strata properties. Uh, it is quite tricky with strata, um, unless you've got your own meter. Um, if your like apartments or whatever have got their own meter, then you should be able to install it. But I guess it depends on what your roof space is like. And yeah, otherwise it is quite difficult because you kind of have to divide the solar between all of the people. And there are some sort of proprietary systems out there that can do it, but it is a little bit tricky. Yes. Um, Another way that some places do it is using an embedded network. If you've already kind of got that, and then they can on charge for the solar and stuff like that. But if your strata is only concerned about roof maintenance, and otherwise there's no other sort of impediments, like that's not usually a big problem. Are they just thinking that it might stop them from getting on the roof and maintaining it? Where we've had systems like that before, we've always just allowed space and like access ways and things like that, so all the normal roof maintenance can be done. I think I've covered all of the questions. Oh, these days, do you think gas kitchens are on the way out? Oh, I probably personally think they are, just for lots of other reasons other than um, like health reasons and things as well, and safety reasons. Induction cooktops are, I think, really great. I've got one in my kitchen. Um, but yeah, there's lots of advantages to going all electric. All right, what time is it? It's right on 7:30. So, unless there's any last minute questions, we can probably finish up there. Thank you so much to everyone for coming along. I hope it's been helpful, and yeah, good luck with getting your solar panels and batteries.